There we go.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Katie Chuba from the Hartland Chamber. I apologize for a few minute delay here. I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to blame it on my home network. How's that? So today, we're being recorded today. If you couldn't make the webinar, we're posting this and here at noon with area business leaders and industry experts during these what I call crazy times. As you all know, I call them crazy times with our COVID-19 pandemic, and just do what we can to help businesses with their strategies to whether they're surviving or thriving, or thinking about their processes and what they need in place to reopen. So I want to first shout out to my guest panelist today, Meegan Holland from the Michigan Retailers Association. So thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I know we were trying to connect before the Zoom started, so I'm kind of shut down. So I had this all in my mind, like how I was going to introduce you and kind of build up your resume. So I'm going to let, and I know you're Vice President of Marketing Communications. Is that correct?
Sure. I can do my own intro. Don't worry about it.
Yes, you're the best. Thank you so much. So Meegan, tell us a little bit about yourself. And your position and your association and all that good stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for coming.
Sounds good. Thanks, Katie. We got through the technical difficulties. Well, I'm with Michigan Retailers Association, which is the largest statewide retail association in the nation. We represent 5,000 stores, actually 5,000 members, and they own 15,000 stores throughout Michigan. So it's both the big guys like Meijer and Kroger and Best Buy and Home Depot, and it's also the mom and pop shops. And to some extent, the name Michigan Retailers is a little bit of a misnomer, because we represent everything from agriculture to accounting to auto repair. And that's because we sell credit card processing and workers' comp insurance, and they're really quality services. And so those are very popular among small businesses in Michigan. But our mission is to advocate for retail. And we do that in a few ways. One is we actually have a lobbyist that works with the state legislature, educating them on retail issues, and particularly now working closely with the governor's office, because the governor's in charge right now under the emergency order. So we've been in contact with that office a lot in the last several weeks. And then we also do it through our Buy Nearby program. That's BUY Nearby program, which is a shop local program. And I swear it's more important than ever now, because we all want people to shift their shopping dollars from online to the local stores. The pandemic kind of trained people to go online, unfortunately. So we have a very active Facebook page. In fact, Katie, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. I'm going to... I need you to allow me to
give you permission.
Yeah. Yep. Let me know when you've done that, and I'll hit. So I'll keep talking while Katie's trying to allow me to share my screen.
Yeah, so I'm working from my phone. So what I need to do is figure. Yes, please do so.
Yep, and it's still disabled. So anyways, you may know, you may have
yeah.
Buy Nearby.
I need to figure out how to do that. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's disabled. All right. So.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out how to do it from my cell phone. So I apologize.
Well, why don't I keep talking while you're figuring that out?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure. So anyway, the Buy Nearby guy, is our mascot. He's a goofy mascot, big blue 8-foot state of Michigan. And he's been in a ton of parades and festivals around the state. And unfortunately, he's pretty well shut down this summer because of the cancellation of all the events. But through that, we also hand out, like last year, we handed out 37,000 shopping bag stuffers that have really interesting statistics on them on the impact of local shopping dollars. So, for example, we did an economic study in 2017. We're still using it. But that year, Michiganders sent $18.5 billion out of Michigan to places like Amazon and Wayfair and, you know, all those. So we're trying to get that money back into our economy. So those kinds of statistics is what we have on posters and flyers and all that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's so important right now to support the local business more than ever, like you said. And Meegan, just so you know, you should be all set on sharing your screen. So I know you had some things prepared for us today. So whenever you're ready, you should have access. There you go. Awesome.
All right.
I figured it out.
Well, fantastic. Let's get started then. And by the way, the slogan of Buy Near Buy is keep your money in the mitten. We thought that was pretty catchy. So I use that with media all the time. And at Michigan Retailers, we've spent countless hours asking or answering member questions on things like unemployment and the Paycheck Protection Program and all those programs that probably a lot of you have been concerned about lately. So it's a really happy time for me to be able to pivot to helping everybody reopen their stores. We need to get reopened. And at the same time, we are also totally supportive of store owners who decide not to reopen right now. It's your decision. You've got to do it when you think you're prepared. It doesn't do anybody any good if you open before you're really ready to. So hopefully you will find lots of good stuff in this webinar. I'm going to be throwing a lot of ideas out there in the next half hour, so you might want to take down some notes. Some of these ideas you've probably already thought of, and that's fantastic. In fact, I based this webinar on the ideas that I got from retailers, mainly through a very active Facebook group that we have that you're welcome to join. Any retail advocates or retailers are welcome to join it. And it's called Michigan Retailers Strategizing Together. So if you search for that on Facebook, when you ask to join, if you could please answer the 3 questions, because we do like to limit it to people who are really engaged in retail. But I gleaned a lot of ideas for this webinar from that. So you have probably already figured out that what you're going to reopen soon or have already reopened is not the same store that you opened in March. And that's just a fact. You know, things have changed so much. So 2 major lessons out of all this. One is that it's all about relationships. In fact, Katie and I were talking about this earlier. You need to have good relationships with your community, your local law enforcement, believe it or not. We found that out because some local law enforcement around the state really cracked down on retailers in the past few weeks. You need a good relationship with your landlord, your employees, your customers, your vendors, all those things. And if you didn't have those relationships, solid relationships going into the pandemic, you might be struggling right now. You maybe couldn't get a PPP loan, or you maybe couldn't renegotiate your lease as a result. So I'm hearing a little background noise. Is there any way to mute everybody? That maybe nobody else is hearing it but me. Anyway, so those relationships are super important. So if you didn't have them going in, start working on them now. And then also a web presence. If you weren't on the web, you were pretty well dead in the water for several weeks. So if you can pull that off, and I know it's hard and I know it's expensive, but if you can pull that off, the next time COVID rears its ugly head, which it may in fall or winter from what we're hearing, then maybe you'll at least be able to do online sales. Okay. Focus on your store, your employees, your vendors, and your customers. And I'm going to start with your store. You need to think through your physical presence right now, social distancing, all that. So hopefully during this period of time, you've already thought of your exterior, for example. Your windows hopefully were bright and there was a cheery display in it, because nobody wants to walk by a store where the lights are off and the windows are empty. So hopefully you were thinking about that. And then as far as the interior, a lot of these things are dictates from the governor. For example, social distancing measures. And one way to pull that off is, does your store have the luxury of an entrance door and an exit door? Not all stores do, I realize, but if you can pull that off, if you have such a setup, that's perfect to make one-way entrances to keep people socially distanced. Do you need to widen your aisles? Is that possible? Do you need to take out some of the charming furniture, for example, that you use to display items, just to widen those aisles? And I know some boutiques that I just absolutely love, but they have very narrow aisles. And in those boutiques, I would recommend putting floor markers, arrows down on the floor, and guiding them through customers through your store one way. Bring them all around your store, have them wend around by the cash register and out, just so customers aren't squeezing by each other in these aisles. So you may have to get floor decals or signage or something to help customers get through your store. Also, we all know that right now the governor is requiring that you have a limit of 10 customers in your store. That said, I've seen signs on stores saying, by appointment only 2 customers at a time. I will tell you that Michigan Retailers Association is interpreting the by appointment language very broadly. We're saying, think of it as if it were a hair salon and a walk-in appointment. You walk in, you hope you get in there right away. Sometimes you can't, so you either wait or you come back at an appointed time. Because what we're trying to do is get shoppers over the hump of thinking, oh my gosh, I have to make an appointment, so I better not go to the store. No, go ahead and go to the store, and if they can't accommodate you at that time, they'll tell you and gladly make an appointment at another time. We just don't want people walking downtown and thinking, oh, I can't stop in that store. Because obviously for a lot of smaller stores, the 10-person limit is a non-issue. There rarely are 10 people in your store at any given time, except maybe on a busy weekend. So we're trying to get shoppers past that language. And yet, if you want to limit that and do it by appointment only or whatever, that's your call. I always say, your store, your rules. So do whatever you think is best for you. And the whole appointment thing is interesting to me anyways, because I think as you move forward, you will probably want to keep after hours appointments for your vulnerable customers. There are going to be customers who simply are afraid to go out shopping, and we need to figure out how to serve them. So you may want to keep after hours appointments for those folks. And there's nothing wrong with starting out soft and easy if you just decide to do by appointment solely anyways. I think a soft opening would be good, because that way you can take some trusted customers or friends, have them go through your store, look at your signage, look at the layout, look at the path that you've carved for them, and give you feedback on, yes, this works, this doesn't work. In fact, today on our Buy Nearby Facebook page, I put up a meme that says, you know, leave good reviews for your store. Don't leave bad reviews right now. Retailers are trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So be patient with retailers right now. And we give out that kind of messaging through our Buy Nearby Facebook page all the time, and are really asking shoppers. And by the way, we have more than 30,000 followers on that page. It's a great vehicle to communicate with shoppers these kinds of messages. And you can steal those memes if you want and put them up on your Facebook page. I mean, that's what it's all about, is to support retailers, but doing it in a shopper-facing Facebook page. By the way, we also have a Michigan Retailers Association Facebook page, and that's retailer facing. So that has a ton of information on it. Like I just posted yesterday, the fact that the state treasury is allowing people, we all know they've allowed retailers to defer their tax payments, which is no help at all because then you just have a big bill on June 20th. Well, now they're allowing you to pay them in installments. So you can either pay it off June 20th or you can do a 6-month installment plan. So information like that is going up on that Facebook page. Okay, so the other thing is guarding your employees. Do you need to get those plexiglass sneeze guards at the checkout desk? If that doesn't work for you, I saw a great solution in PetSmart. They just put up one of those kind of cheap white plastic 8-foot tables in front of their checkout desk. And on it, they had a credit card machine and hand sanitizer. And it was just a super simple, effective way of distancing at that when people checked out. So think creatively. I realize not everybody has the space for that solution, but just think through, how can I make that happen? So visual displays, now is the time for less clutter. And frankly, I preached this even before the pandemic. Retailers have such a hard time getting rid of inventory that is not selling. Well, get rid of it now. You don't need clutter in your store for a couple reasons. Number one, you're limited to 10 people. So you want to keep people moving through your store. You don't want them lingering at a display that has 1,000 items and they're touching everything. That's another reason to limit clutter, because you want to minimize touching. And the more people touch, the more your cleaning nightmare grows. So that's another thing to think about. So get rid of the clutter. The other thing is we deal with a lot of grocers, so obviously they've been open all this time. And I've learned a couple lessons from them. For example, I wanted to buy an onion from Meijer. I couldn't buy one onion. I had to buy a bag of onions because they were grouping items. Well, if you do a lot of bulk selling like that or individual selling like that, you may want to group some items and sell them as a group, because again, it minimizes touching. Let me get rid of these calendar. There we go. You want to minimize the touching. So if you sell anything like that, a lot of separate items, just think that through. And the other part is bulk selling like we see in grocery stores, you know, the scoop for peanuts or the handle you pull down for coffee. Well, those kind of things need constant cleaning when you have them out. So that may go away for a while. You need to think about all your merchandise and how can you sell it in the most safe way possible. So I imagine, you know, I'm sure I haven't been in a grocery store in quite a while, frankly, but I'm sure we aren't seeing the olive and salad bars anymore because it's just not a good way to sell those items right now. So finally, fitting rooms. If you have a lot of fitting rooms, you may want to reduce the number, because every time a customer goes in there and they come out, and the person waiting to get into that fitting room is going to want to see you go in there and clean it up a little bit, you know, maybe wipe down the high touch surfaces. So just for to make it less labor intensive, you may want to limit your fitting rooms. And that gets to the whole cleanliness thing. You may want to reduce your hours, because you're going to be having your employees go through a constant cleaning regimen, and it's exhausting for you and your staff. So if you reduce your hours, you'll have more time for that. And it's just, but if you do that, just be sure to advertise it. In fact, if you're already open, I hope you're screaming that you're open, because stores, a lot of customers don't know, is the store open or not? You might want to save yourself a phone call and just scream through signage, through your social media, your telephone message, your voicemail. We're open, and here are our new hours. And make sure to make that clear on your Google listing also. So the bit about the nonstop wipe down regimen, there's nothing wrong with being obvious about that in front of customers. In fact, it will make them feel safer when they see you and your employees constantly wiping down the credit card machine or whatever. So that's a good thing. And by all means, if you don't have contactless credit card processing, now would be the time to think about it. And mobile credit card processing if you're running out and doing curbside delivery and having to have them pay out in the car. This is the one time I'll do a shameless plug for Michigan Retailers Association. Last year, we did $1.4 billion in credit card processing. We know what we're doing. We were one of the first non-bank institutions in Michigan in the late 60s to get into it. We have all the technology that Square does, and yet we're extremely competitive on rates with them, and we have all the technology they have, except there's one big difference. Our customer service is a real human being. I sit about 20 yards away from them when we're working in the office, and they are the most cheerful, upbeat group of people I have ever met. So they're great to deal with, and that way you don't have to go on a website and try to figure out, what for technical support, how do you fix your problem? We walk you through it. So I'm so proud of what we do through that. And plus, we're a Michigan company, so keep your money in the mitten, right? Okay, let's go on to curbside. If you're not already doing it, it's a little more complicated than you think it's going to be. Number one, you obviously have to map it out. Do you have a place for people to stop to pick up the items? You may have to talk to the city about bagging a parking meter if that's your situation. What kind of signage will the city or township allow to help you guide customers? I went to Staples the other day for office supplies, super easy because their signage was great. They obviously have the luxury of their own parking lot, but there was a sign right out front. It said, if you're picking up an item, you can come in our store, turn right and go to our pickup desk. You can honk your horn or you can call us and we will bring the item out to your car. So it was super easy and seamless, and I just popped open my trunk and they put it in. Interesting though, I'm picking up an item tomorrow from Williams-Sonoma, and I said, can I just pop my trunk and can you put it in there? And they won't do it. They're going to look at my ID through my car window, make sure I'm the right person picking up the order. They're going to bring the item out in a cart, and then I get out of the car, retrieve the item, put it in my car, and then, so there's no contact at all. So everybody has their own system. I just find that kind of interesting. So reusable items are probably gone. We've all seen restaurants use the plastic flatware now. They aren't, if you go in, chances are you might be using their metal flatware. I don't know. I have not been up north. You can go in a restaurant, and I have not been in a restaurant, so I don't know how they're handling that. But I just have a feeling that disposable is going to be a thing again, sadly for the environment. But and then curbside. Beyond that, we've talked about signage, but you may want to continue that even after you're fully reopened, because again, I think we're going to have this population of customers that just are going to be too scared to go into stores. So if they don't want to come in for an appointment, then maybe you continue to offer curbside delivery beyond that. It makes sense to me. And then signage, man, that's going to be your best friend going forward. You're going to need it all over the place. You're going to need it outside your store if you require face masks, for example. People want to know what they're getting into. If they don't want to wear a face mask, maybe they walk away, and that's fine. And that's better to give them that message outside rather than inside, because I was in a store over the weekend where they were requiring face masks, but there was no signage outside. So the customer walked in, it was a young man, and he just looked so confused why he had to wear a face mask. And the store owner explained to him that she's trying to protect her customers. And I chimed in and said, and I want you to protect me too. So he walked out in a bit of a daze. And I turned to the store owner and I said, so how has it been going on that front? And she said, well, somebody did flip me the finger yesterday. And I hate to say it, but retailers are getting grief from people who don't want to wear masks. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, it's kind of discouraging. So you want that good signage in your store at the front throughout, just telling customers what you expect of them. Okay, now on to our employees. You really need to care about their health right now. You need to know, are they coming into your store healthy? And a lot of stores are asking employees to do self-screening, answering questions like, okay, literally on a template I've seen, have you had diarrhea, a temperature, an elevated temperature, coughing, shortness of breath, all these symptoms of COVID in the last 24 hours. Have you traveled either out of state or internationally in the last 14 days? Do you believe you've been exposed to anybody with COVID in the last 14 days? And it's tricky how you want to handle it. There are guidelines for how you may want to ask them to quarantine if any of those are the case. If they just feel they might have been exposed, then I think you can just let them in your store, but they've got to wear a mask and socially distance, and their job may not allow that, so you may have to have them quarantine. But if they have symptoms, obviously you do not want them in your store. And some retailers are taking employees' temperatures before they enter the store. If you can get your hands on an infrared thermometer right now, great. I've heard not all of them are accurate, and they are difficult to procure right now. But if you do that, you need to know a couple things so you don't violate HIPAA or the American Disabilities Act. Number one, when you take their temperature, don't write down their name. Hopefully they have an employee ID number, or you assign them a code or something so you don't use any personally identifiable information. And the other thing is, don't write down their exact temperature. Just say whether they passed or they failed. And if it's just a mildly elevated temperature, don't sweat it. Have them sit for a while, take their temperature again, and it's likely back to normal. I mean, mildly elevated is not a big deal, but if it is elevated, then you do need to send them home, maybe not let them back unless they have a doctor's note. And if your health system is too stressed to get one of those, they've got to quarantine for 2 weeks after their temperature goes back to normal. So you just need to figure out some guidelines. And this will all kind of feed into one of the things that the governor is requiring right now, and that is a COVID-19 preparedness and response plan. And we have a template of that on our website, and it's linked, it's in our reopen retail guide that's on our website. So that our website is retailers.com. And if you click on the news tab, you'll find just a wealth of information. In fact, I can go to that right now. One of the posts we have is a post with free downloadable signs. So our customer limit is 10, and all of it is pretty lighthearted wording. We're trying not to say, for example, a retailer asked me, what do you think of no mask, no service? And I said, I think it's a little confrontational, and it's already a political flashpoint, the whole face mask thing. So we handled it this way. Let me scroll down. Thank you for wearing a face mask. Consider it your good deed for the day. Or thank you for wearing a face mask. You're helping to protect our frontline employees and vulnerable customers. So we try to, just keep it a little more lighthearted. You're free. You're welcome to download all these posters for free to put up around your store. Okay, let me get back to my. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Meegan, I wasn't able to see. No, I was just going to say I was only able to view your slide. I wasn't able to view if you jumped to the website.
Let me see if I can. Sorry about that. Thanks for letting me.
No, that's okay.
That. Yeah,
it might be nice to share the website for folks so they can see.
Yeah, and I will at the very end.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I can do that. It's a little difficult to flip to it from here.
That's okay, but it's retailers.com, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. So thanks for pointing that out. So that's all I have to really say about health screening. The governor is requiring if you do have an employee diagnosed with COVID, you do have to inform all the other employees in the store. Again, don't use their name. That would violate HIPAA, but you need to inform them that an employee has been diagnosed with COVID and kind of trace who they worked closely with or where they worked in the store and make sure that's all sanitized, etc. So, and also make your employees aware of your personal hygiene standards. It seems kind of obvious, but you really need to reinforce right now. You want them to wash their hands a lot. And that means you have to provide them with hand washing breaks. And of course, I'm sure you'll have sanitizer all over the store too. So don't reinforce with them. I don't mind if you feel you have to go and wash your hands. Please do it. And you currently are required to provide masks for your employees who are on the front lines. I know that it can be hard to procure masks. The Attorney General is being somewhat sympathetic on that front and telling local law enforcement to take it easy on retailers right now. But she also made it clear you have to be making a good faith effort to find masks. So, and frankly, I'm not hearing a lot of retailers complain that they aren't finding them anymore. They were pretty panicky in the beginning, but I'm not hearing that anymore. So I'm betting that won't be too much of a problem. But if it is, the Michigan Chamber, if you just Google Michigan Chamber PPE, they have a great website of all their members. So they're all from Michigan and they make PPE. So, I mean, what better than buying, and keeping the money in Michigan's economy? So I highly recommend you go to that website if you're looking for personal protective equipment. Okay, so now we get into managing employees. You're going to need to train them to sell with a face mask. And that is not an easy thing to do because customers can't see, they don't know what your face is doing when they can only see the eyes. So I'm recommending that you train your employees to be overly expressive with their facial expressions. I know that sounds weird, but customers are going to want to see your eyes crinkle when you're smiling. So you may want to practice that and actually do some role playing with your employees to show them, hey, that's a great expression you have right now. It gives off a cheerful vibe, even though I can't see half your face. So think about that. Also, they haven't been selling for a while, so you're going to want to refresh them on sales techniques. So in other words, if a customer walks in your store, instead of saying, what are you looking for? Invite them to, look throughout your store. Oh, and we have a special in the back of the store you'll want to check out. Maybe give them a quick lay of the land. We have arrows. We would really appreciate it if you would follow the arrows or whatever you want to do. But just, make sure that your employees are aware of the talking points that you want provided to customers as they come into your store. And then unfortunately, the face mask thing has been a huge source of anxiety for retailers. It's probably the topic I've talked about most with concerned retailers. So we are telling retailers to train their employees in de-escalation techniques. And in fact, I'm having a conversation with a police officer today who does de-escalation training. And we are going to offer some webinars through Michigan retailers for free to anybody. You don't have to be a member. That may be the last webinar we offer for free, I'm not sure, but to non-members. But we just feel it's so important that retail employees know how to de-escalate these situations. But just a quick tip right now, the best line I've heard from a retailer when somebody is belligerent and doesn't want to wear a mask, she says to them, I'm really sorry, but I need you to wear a mask if you enter my store because I need to protect my employees and my vulnerable customers. But if you don't feel you can do that, that's fine. I will happily serve you curbside or virtually. I think that's a good message because she's not refusing service and she's giving the customer an out or an option. So hopefully that diffuses the situation. But as we all know, there have been some tragic consequences over this whole face mask thing, and it can be a flashpoint. So as I said, keep an eye out on our Facebook, the Michigan Retailers Facebook page, or join the Facebook group. We will definitely be publicizing the times of those de-escalation webinars when they come about. And I think we're going to do a couple themes. One is de-escalation and the other is workplace violence. But that'll get, you know, again, just into handling belligerent customers, which quite frankly, a lot of us have had before the pandemic, and it's always kind of a scary issue. So, okay, and then shifts for your employees. You may want to, if you have the luxury, and not everybody does, schedule employees on completely separate shifts. So there's no cross-pollination between employees. So if one shift there's somebody who's asymptomatic on that, then they aren't going to infect the other shift that comes in after them. The other thing is, have to self-quarantine. You're going to want to have cross-trained your employees so that somebody can seamlessly slip into that person's job. All things to think about. As far as your vendors, you need to think about, okay, what vendors or delivery folks come into my store a lot, and then figure out ways with them on how you can make contact minimal. Can you receive merchandise with contactless signatures, for example? Will the delivery person unload the stuff outside your store? You or an employee go out and retrieve it, which means you need to call each other when that happens. But obviously, if it's a really heavy load and they need to come in your store, that's fine. Just ask them to wear a face mask. And I have a feeling probably every delivery person is doing that anyway. I mean, they understand if they come to your store, they've got to have a mask on. And finally, your customers. Job number one, and I've already talked about this, we need to regain their trust to make them feel safe to come into our stores. So how do you do that? Well, hopefully all along during this pandemic break, you kept in touch with your customers. Maybe you called your best customers just to check up on them, or texted them, or maybe you did Facebook Live videos. I talked to two of my retailer friends who said, both of them had the same reaction. I hate being on camera. I don't want to do Facebook Live. But they felt they were forced into it, and both of them are just very genuine people. And one of them just got on and said, I am so nervous right now. I've never done a Facebook Live, but here we go. And it was great, and she made a ton of sales. The other one told me, this is mind-boggling to me, but she said she had her best sales day ever doing her Facebook Live video. Now, granted, she's a phenomenal marketer. She has great relationships with her customers, and they turned out in droves to support her. So she's just a really special retailer. But what they did in their videos is they didn't just hold up a product and go, oh, and we have this, and we have this. They did mini demonstrations and incorporated their products. So if you are a dress boutique, show how to accessorize a dress, or a jewelry store may show how to mix jewelry, different styles of jewelry. You know, there's lots of possibilities with home decor and gift stores. So just think outside the box, think creatively. You know, if you aren't ready to reopen, or you're just reopening on a really limited basis, this is still a really good tool for you. And I call it serving now to sell later. You're giving your customer information, even though you may not be making a sale right on the spot. And as much as we would all love to have a grand reopening, we all know that's not going to happen. Nobody wants to be in a packed public open house right now. So you need to think about, how can I have an effective sales event with a small gathering? How can I make it meaningful to them? And maybe you have it outside. Maybe you have access to a gorgeous garden or a cool alley or something, you know, a parking lot, whatever, because obviously people are going to feel more comfortable outside right now. So think along those lines. And then I want to take you back to the very first day you ever opened your store, and when that first customer walked through your door. I'm sure you just greeted them with huge enthusiasm. Well, you're going to want to do that again, because anybody entering your store right now, they are an early adopter of shopping again, and we are going to treasure those customers that they have the courage to get out and walk into your store. So you want to go overboard for them without being overbearing. In other words, maybe you put a little something extra into their bag as a thank you item, or just even a thank you note. You want them to know that you are so grateful for their business. So be sure to be kind to those first adopters of shopping again. And finally, be transparent. You want to tell customers how you're keeping your store clean, or how you're handling inventory. You will get questions from that, from your customers on that. I have not gone back to my hairdresser yet, but I have already pummeled him with questions. Are you wearing a mask? Are you asking your customers to wear masks? Are you, wiping down the chair? Are you replacing the cape every single time? I want to know these things when it's time for me to go back into his salon, because salons, I can kind of see why they aren't open yet, as painful as that is for all of us. We just need to make sure that, everybody feels safe going back into them. So, okay. Now for the tough part. You need to set some ground rules for your store. You need to make some decisions, and then you need to be firm but kind in enforcing them. And this gets back to the whole face mask thing. Are you going to require face masks? Technically, they're required right now by the governor in any indoor public spaces, but we all know stores aren't necessarily enforcing it. Some are, some aren't. I am so open-minded about whatever decision you make on that. I know a lot of store owners have said, I've got it posted outside that you must wear a face mask, but if somebody says they aren't going to wear one, I let them in my store and I let them shop. 2 reasons. Number 1, you need their money right now. And number 2, it's not worth endangering you or your employees in confronting them if you don't feel confident confronting them. Some customers, you can get a feeling for that they'll react nicely. Others, you don't know. So you don't want to endanger your employees. Now, some of you may really disagree with me on that and say, no, doggone it, I am going to enforce face mask wearing. That's fine. It's again, your store, your rules. Just know what you're going to say when somebody does get belligerent. But it's been a huge deal. And it's just not a fun issue to deal with. And we all know that there are no criminal penalties for not wearing a face mask. So the cops aren't going to back you up. But the police officer I did talk to recently about de-escalation, he did say, well, but if somebody does get belligerent and unruly, you can ask them to leave your store. And if they don't leave, you can call the police and tell them that you have a customer who's trespassing. And they can, fine them, or I don't know if they arrest for trespassing or not, but they can remove them for trespassing. So keep that in mind. And, maybe you have the friendliest community in the world and you aren't going to face these issues, but other retailers have. So I just want to give you a heads up. Another decision, do you want to do volunteer temperature checks for your customers? That does mean having an employee outside your door, offering that. And you may need somebody outside your door anyway to, if you are getting a lot of customers and you need to limit to the 10 that the governor has required. And if you need that, I would just make sure that's one of your more cheerful employees. And with everybody who comes up, they're offering them a squirt of hand sanitizer, because then everybody has clean hands when they come in your store. And, volunteer temperature checks can work both ways. They may make customers feel safe to come in your store, or they may make customers mad that you're even offering it. You never know. Will you allow children in your store? Menards is not. They're not allowing children 16 and under in their store, even if accompanied by a parent. And I get it, because children touch everything. And that makes your job of cleaning after hours all that more nightmarish. So that may be a decision you want to make. Could be a point of tension with some customers. Just, think that one through. And then, will you allow returns? This is a biggie. If you don't, you'll irritate customers. And if you do, you just made your job harder, because you need to wipe down everything or quarantine it or whatever before you put it back on the rack or the shelf. And that goes for clothes that are tried on also. We don't really have a lot of science backing this up, Excuse me, I need a drink of coffee here. But it's been it was a big topic of discussion on our retailer Facebook group. And some retailers said they were going to steam the clothes and put them back on the rack. Others said that they were going to quarantine the clothes and then steam them and put them back on the rack. We all know the virus doesn't last on fabric for very long. And so that's a good thing. But still, it's going to be a source of concern for customers. And I think quarantining for a day is enough, and maybe steaming it. But I've heard of stores that are quarantining up to 72 hours. So again, your call and whatever you decide to do on that. I've also heard of retailers who talked about using UV light with their clothes. I don't quite know how that works. And I also know that could lead to fading. So I don't know if that's a good solution or not. So last but not least, you need to ooze hope. And I mean that seriously. It sounds cheesy, I realize, but our economy is driven on hope. So you need to ooze hope through your messaging on social media, through your signage, your employee training. You want your employees to ooze hope. You just want a really good vibe when people walk into your store. That will do you more favors than any 70% off sale you could ever do. So finally, here is how you can get in touch with me if you want. I am on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle. Our website, again, packed with information, retailers.com. And there's my email address also. Are there any questions? Or can I show you anything that you on our website that you may be curious about?
Thank you, Meegan. We have a Q&A, so everyone's on mute, but if you have a question, go ahead and type it in Q&A, and both Meegan and we could see information you have and presenter and such useful information, not only for retail, I think for any business.
Oh yeah,
that they can adapt. I mean, for sure. A couple of things that I wanted to share and with our listeners, as well as, I mean, maybe this might be useful if you're talking to other communities. Recently, Livingston County, and I was on this team to develop a consumer survey. We had over 1,000 people take the survey, and it was interesting because 75%, it was over 75% of those folks go to business websites to find information. So when you were talking about servicing like maybe vulnerable customers after hours, that kind of thing, make sure you put that on your website. Make sure you're posting it on social media. You know, that I can't stress that enough, because these people, this is where they're going. They're going to your website to know, are you open? When are your hours? Do you have special times by appointment, whatever. So like you said, communicate. You cannot over communicate enough.
Even if it's just a landing page, if that's all you can afford to do right now, just a landing page with your full address. It also amazes me sometimes how hard I have to look for a store's location and your hours.
Yeah.
Just have it right up front if that's all you can manage.
And some small businesses or sole proprietors may not have a website. Facebook page, it's free. Absolutely. Right? Yep. So what a great thing. Another thing too that you were talking about, how consumers might not feel comfortable going into the store. Ironically, with the survey, it was close to 60% of people, and we had asked about the dining. They said they would feel comfortable going in and sitting down and dining in, long as there were safety precautions. So, and another thing, which is really awesome, because from what I hear, we are the first community in the state to initiate this. The Hartland Township, we had a special call last week, but the township is actually relaxing their ordinances for our retailers and our restaurants to maybe they do, like, some of the ideas were maybe you have a tent outside and people can shop in the tent or shop or dine in the tent, or, you know, just thinking outside the box, or you can put signs out front now where normally you couldn't. So it's really nice to see, you know, like you said, you had mentioned a few times, be a little creative, think outside the box of how you can really convey your messaging. So just thought I'd share some of those things going on in our communities. So
absolutely. I think that's wonderful. It sounds like you have a very open-minded, supportive community of retail. And, you know, I've been preaching all along, regain the trust of your customers. But I have to say, I talked to Manistee retailers yesterday, and some of them had apparently the best Memorial Day weekend. I mean, their Memorial Day weekend sales were as good or almost as good as last year. So maybe customers are not as uptight as we all thought they would be about getting into stores, but there will still be those ones who just don't want to risk it yet. And we want to accommodate them because, you know, obviously you need the money right now and you want to make sure you're serving your beloved customers.
For sure, theory with the relaxation ordinances, because we want those businesses. We want to give them the tools. The township wants to provide relaxation on this, to provide them with the tools so they can do all that stuff. I mean, that's the name of the game, right? So, yeah. And then, you know what, I was kind of taking notes during presentation. So, you talked about screening too, which is really good. I know the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, you know, we promote, a lot of things that they're doing. We have great partnership with them. And two, you know, like at the chamber, when we're back in our office, we'll have a kind of a guest list. Like if we even allow people in our office, we're still navigating through that. But it might, I don't know. And I guess my question to you is, can you do that with a retailer? Can you ask every customer that comes in, can we get your name and your email and or your phone number? You know, because let's say one of your employees comes down with COVID, wouldn't you want to email all the people that were in the store that day interfacing with that employee at the cash register or whatever?
Right. You know, you certainly can ask it. And I think that's a good idea. You certainly can ask it. If they don't want to give it to you, then I'm not sure I don't think you can force the issue, but I don't think that's a bad idea. And just say, you know, hey, we're just doing this for our customers' safety. A lot of places have, you know, books out anyways asking for email addresses for the email list.
Right.
Yeah, but this is a little different. Yeah. But obviously they can refuse too, because it is personal identifying information. Yeah. It sure is. Yeah. Well, you know, we'll see. And I you know, I have been hearing through the grapevine, for those that are listening, that customers are a little impatient, I guess is a good word to use. So I guess we really need to, as a community, convey to the customer, or you as the customer, to just be patient. It's not going to be what I mean, you'll still get service. It might not be the service lickety split or exactly how you were receiving it before. So you just have to be patient, because these businesses are learning. They're learning how to serve their customers the best, safest possible way. So I cannot stress that enough, because I'm hearing that that's a difficult component for some of the businesses, that the customers aren't as pleased or not as patient as they'd like them to be. And they're finding inventory isn't quite what they expect from the store. Well, I explained to them, look, those retailers had to cancel a lot of orders because they didn't know what was going to happen this summer. So no, their inventory probably won't be the breadth of what you're used to, but it'll get there. It'll get there. Again, just be patient. Yeah, for sure. So, I don't see any questions coming in, so, which is a good thing. That means that, boy, you covered a lot of stuff. Hopefully. And nobody has any questions. So we are coming up. I just want to say thank you for joining me today. I loved having you today. I love having industry experts. It's so helpful. You know, we got to get this economy back and stay united. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, it was so nice meeting you. And please, if you ever need anything from our community, or I would love to stay in contact with you, that'd be great. So I appreciate that. So
I'd love
thanks
that.
again.
Okay.
Okay. All
Bye-bye,
right.
everybody.
You're the best. Okay. Have a great week. Thank you, everybody.